Yeah.
Okay. I'll go ahead and do that right now. Wonderful.
No.
Hi, everybody. As you're coming into the room, just wanted to say hi. Feel free to turn on your cameras and give us a wave if you would like. And then I'm going to make sure everybody's muted for the time being. So if you could mute yourselves, otherwise I'm the one with the power of the mute button. So forgive me if I mute you. And if you have something to say, you can raise your hand or give us a wave and we will unmute you.
Oh my, welcome Benji.
Hi.
Hello Laura. Yos, it's Nalakia, it's Benji Goldfarb. It's a pleasure to introduce you to Benji Goldfarb. I don't know if you know Benji, but he for many years was a member of the congregation and lived in Omer with his wife. Froma.
Oh, he's doing the same thing.
Okay, we're just going to give it a couple minutes to let others sign in, and then we'll get started.
Oh, let's see here.
Hello, Katina. Hello, Joan. And we'll be joined momentarily by Scott Gordon.
Let's see who else is here.
Welcome, Don. Okay, why don't we get started? I am delighted to be able to welcome Rabbi Yosef, he goes often by Yos, Baruch Former, who serves as rabbi of Magen Avraham in Omer, our sister congregation of many, many years. And Yos is a graduate of the Schechter Institute, and there is a long tradition of Magen Avraham hosting student interns from Schechter under the guidance of their rabbi, going back to Rabbi Michael Gratz and to others. Yos in particular was supervised by our beloved Rabbi Yonatan Sadaf, who served Yos at our congregation for 3 years before he became the rabbi of Magen Avraham, and then went off to Australia, where he's doing beautifully with his beautiful family, growing family. And Rabbi Dikla Sharzer, who served before Yos, but she also was an intern. And that's a program that our synagogue has supported over the years. Yos has a really interesting background. He's from Haifa. He's got a background as a Jew from Greece. Family comes from Greece to Israel. He worked in high tech. And his story, I think, of how he went from being a worker in the high tech and IT field to deciding to become a Masorti rabbi, I think is going to be part of what he addresses as he speaks about this very important tekes, this very important ritual that is developed in Israel for transitioning from Yom HaZikarkon, which is observed Tuesday night and Wednesday this week, to the celebration and the joy of Yom HaTzmaut this year. We celebrate 74th anniversary of Israel's birth. And it's a very difficult transition to go from such deep sadness, and it's very personal. Every family in Israel has some direct loss from war or terrorism to moment of celebration. So that's where religious ritual can be extremely important. Welcome, Rabbi Yosef Baruch from.
תודה רבה הרב קרביץ. Thank you very much. I'm very happy that you joined me here on your free Sunday. And what I'm going to do today, what we're going to do today is talk not only about the ceremony. One of the ending slide of this PowerPoint of this presentation will be about the ceremony itself. I want to walk you through a little about the circumstances of how we get to that ceremony, and then we take a look at the ceremony itself, because a ceremony is a time of gathering that is always connected to what is happening before and after it. So people gather here for 1 hour in the congregation or a little more, but that 1 hour, like Kabbalat Shabbat is the 1 hour or 1 hour and a half, depends on how quick you do it, that separates a week, a work week, and Shabbat, right? So you try to make that 1 hour of Shabbat the linkage between the whole week and the transition to Shabbat, from a work week to Shabbat. Transition is something that is common also in, for example, in Tishrei. When we look at the Jewish high holidays, we see that Yom Kippur is a very scary day, and we need to make some kind of transition to move to the joy of Sukkot, because on Sukkot we are happy every day, we sing Hallel every day. So there's also this kind of transitioning is a very Jewish thing, and I think the state of Israel, when the holidays were built the way they are, they imitate a Jewish tradition. They try to create a secular version of a Jewish tradition. So our outline for today, first I'm going to talk about the timeline of that ceremony, then common practices and emotional states or emotions that might appear, some personal loads, and from those you can know me a little, and then the transition challenges. Why is it so difficult to make that transition, or is it possible? And then we'll talk about the ceremony. That will be the closing thingy. Usually I like to do short things, short talks, short lessons, and make room for questions and dilemmas, which are like the more interesting things that come out of a conversation. So if we look at the timeline, we see that, for example, right now, we are on Sunday, after Shabbat of Achrei Mot Kedoshim. Achrei Mot is after the death of the 2 sons of Aaron. That is one Shabbat we have. Or Kedoshim. I know that outside of Israel, there is a shift in the Shabbatot. Okay, Kedoshim is like Kadosh, holy ones. And so the names of the parashot here are very sensitive, I would say, because this parasha, the parasha of Kedoshim and Achrei Mot, after the death, and the holy ones, is usually these 2 parashot are connected. They are between the Holocaust Memorial Day. Can you read? Is it big enough? Should I enlarge it? I see James, they're struggling with the screen.
You could make it a little bit bigger. That might help a little bit.
Okay.
Oh, perfect.
Okay. So I'll just slide a little to the right and to the left.
Better yet, can you put it into presentation mode? That might be even better.
Okay.
There you go.
Then yes, but I want to see you too. So how do we do that? Okay. So what we have here is actually the timeline of the ceremony, of the transition ceremony here in red. It's in a week that starts with the Holocaust Memorial Day. That was last week on Wednesday. And then there is a Shabbat. And then on this Tuesday night and Wednesday, we have Yom HaZikarkon, which is IDF and terrorism victims Memorial Day, and then we have the Independence Day, right? So this is like, this timeline is important because it's like, it reflects the emotional states that Jews here in Israel go through, right? It's not like we have a single Memorial Day for soldiers or a single Memorial Day for Holocaust. It's like almost 10 days of memorial. And why do I say 10 days? Let's look deep what is happening in the Holocaust Memorial Day. First of all, this is a kind of a new thing. In the last 3 or 4 years, they started doing Zikaron Basalon. I don't know if you've heard about it, but Holocaust survivors are coming to like living rooms or a salon. I don't know if you say salon in English, but they come to living rooms and they give testimonies of what they've seen, of what they have passed in the Holocaust. That is a new initiative here in Israel, and it's something that is very communal. And last week, we had 3 such events in our community. One was in Omer's library, and the other 2 were in private houses.
Rabbi,
Yes.
the community here commemorated the event as well. We had several Zikaron Basalon events in the Twin Cities.
Okay. So you know about it. And so actually, this is a very good thing, because when we had the one Holocaust remembrance Memorial Day, then maybe you have something on that day. Maybe it's very difficult to avoid it in Israel, right? But the fact that you have everyday events allows more people to participate. And but the downside of it is that you have several days when you talk about this thing, and this is not easy to feel, right? It's not easy emotionally for people to have like a Holocaust week. If they go to 2 events, right, they are exposed to, and there is the Holocaust Memorial Day. The Memorial Day itself, we have, as you can see in the right, the TV, there is no entertainment on TV. There is no cafes are closed, restaurants are closed. All the entertainment channels, the soccer channels, right, the sports channels, they are darkened. And at 8 o'clock, you have the national ceremony. At the morning afterwards, those of you who have been to Israel, I assume most of you have been there, so you know there is a siren and everybody stands still and the traffic stops. And then we have also a school, parliament, and municipalities that make ceremonies, and also in workplaces. So we have ceremonies. So this is a very intense day emotionally. But after the Holocaust Day, there is no event. There is a Shabbat where you can rest, but there is nothing that is, how do I say it, me'abed, helping people cope with the emotions that rise up from this day. Okay, so there is something that is left open, I don't know, in the soul or in the air, like because people are exposed to very difficult memories of their families, of our people, and nothing therapeutic is done about it. Okay, except resting on Shabbat. Now, the IDF Terrorism and Victims Memorial Day is very similar to the Holocaust Memorial Days, which means the media, the TV agenda, the websites, everybody are talking about it. A lot of stories are coming up, and it's a good thing, not against it, right? And they have ceremonies, and we have 2 sirens, one in the evening before the main national ceremony starts, and one in the morning. And in many places, there are gatherings where people sing together, because sometimes, for example, Zikaron Basalon it comes because sometimes people are a little fed up from these national big ceremonies or the official ceremonies that have like the same pattern every year and the same text, and people want to do something different where they can talk, where they can share, when they can listen to another person in the same room, right? So people are looking in the last years for other things, for things that are not so automatic, I would say. And if you look, for example, on the idea of terrorism and Memorial Day, you can see that besides the ceremonies in the cemetery, the army cemeteries and the national cemeteries, there is kind of an approach that where people are looking for a different way to remember, a more personal way to remember. This is the schedule, right? These 2 days are very intense Memorial Days. You cannot escape the content that is, it's like a wave, right? If you open the TV, you will see something about it. If you walk in the streets, if you close your TV, close your radio and don't open websites, you will walk in the street at 11 a.m. or 8 p.m. and you will hear the siren. You will see children coming from school with white shirts and this little red sticker on it. So no matter what you do, this is something everybody feels. It's like, for example, Yom Kippur in Israel, where unless you take a tent and go to the Kinneret, which is packed, you cannot avoid Yom Kippur in Israel, right? Now, and then comes Independence Day, where in a very sharp movement is a celebration days. At about 8:30 or 8 or 9 p.m. after the main ceremony ends in Jerusalem, fireworks start to, they start shooting fireworks all over the country. And half an hour later, everybody are out on the street celebrating with the plastic hammers and the music on the radio turns from sad music to happy music, and people meet together and there's friends and families gatherings. So Independence Day is a very happy and free day, and there are airplanes flying on the street, on the sky, and the airplanes display, and everybody are going to the parks and to the seashores, and there is a big gap between these 2 days, and that is where a transition ceremony comes in. The transition tekes maavar. On a personal note, I want to show you a few things. First of all, this is Zikaron Basalon that I gave this year and the previous year about the Holocaust of Greek Jews. This is Yanina, this place with this city on not on a river, but on a lake. This city on a lake is called Yanina, is where my grandparents come from. It's a Romaniot city. Romaniot are Greek-speaking Jews who are not Sephardic and not Ashkenazi. We came before. Our tradition goes back. Our Talmud is the Yerushalmi Talmud. We sing differently. And I'm a Greek speaker, one of the last Romaniots here in Israel, I think. And we're slowly shrinking. This picture from above is the picture from the deportation day of the Greeks, of the Jews of Joannina, of Yanina. It was taken by the German. They documented the deportation to the camps. 91% of our community was murdered in the Holocaust. Here on the left picture, you can see it's a picture from my bar mitzvah. I'm the kid here with the afro curls. From all the people in the picture, 3 are Holocaust survivors. Here is on the right side, you can see my grandma and my grandfather kneeling. They were both are survivors of Bergen-Belsen. My grandfather had only one sister left who lived in Greece. and my grandmother lost all of her family, and except the woman standing here third to the left with the white and dots dress. She was named Doda Hana, Aunt Anna, and she was one of the Mengele women Mengele made tests on. Apparently, he had a special interest in Greek women because they were Mediterranean women. They were different from the women he usually he has had experience on for the last years, and she never had children. She loved children. She loved us a lot, and she hasn't had children. The pictures down here are kneeling here in the middle under the woman with the red shirt is my sister Sarit, and kneeling here under my grandma is my brother Arik. We're all children here. Arik is now 37 years old. Sarit is 40 years old, and I am 46, right? I'm saying that because here on the pictures, you can see my brother's boy, Elroi, and this is my son, Matan, who is 1 year old next week. And this is my sister's twins. My sister lives in Australia. The reason I chose to bring the children here is to show just for a second the complexity of remembering the Holocaust, because I felt like if I put aside only talking about the Holocaust, which is very emotional and close to my heart, there will be something missing, which is the happiness and the joy and the life we have. And that's why I wanted our children to be here too. So this is what the kind of things I personally feel like on the Holocaust memorial, except from what I'm doing as part of my job as a rabbi. On the Army Day, I have a very emotional day too. What you see here to the left side, this picture taken at night, it's a Shabbat dinner we had. Somebody took a picture. It was before we entered with our tanks into Lebanon during the 2006 Lebanon war. We didn't have a table, but citizens brought us hot food and wine. So we used the pavement. Our tanks were parked on the street, on the road, on the side of the road here. And we used that pavement, this pavement, as a table, as a Shabbat table. And we made sure nobody steps on the pavement, and we sat on the side of the pavement using it as a Shabbat table. It was very moving. Somebody made Kiddush, and we also, somebody from the brigade brought us a book of Torah, and we, the morning afterwards, we had the Torah reading. We opened the Torah on one of the tanks front, I don't know how to call it, where the engine is. Anyway, there is a large place there which is flat, and we opened the Torah there, and we read from the Torah. This picture here is my team, my tank team, the central picture, where you see 4 people hugging. This is my tanks team. I was the commander, and this is after the war. Gladly, nobody from our company died in this war, and though we have seen some action, I brought my team home, and it is something that I'm very proud of, that I brought them home sound and safe. In this team, I didn't have a child then, but I had 8 kids. 5 kids were the kids of my driver, Yossi, who is sitting down, and 3 kids are the kids of my gunner, who is in the right corner. His name is Eyal. He's a rabbi also, an Orthodox rabbi, and he had 3 kids then. And you can see there are people working on our tank, and that's because our engine was burnt in the war. But so they replaced it after the war. They replaced whatever needed to be replaced there. And these are some war pictures. Here you can see when I talk about war, about this kind of experience, we always think of it as a horrible thing, and it is a horrible thing sometimes, but it also it's an experience that has a lot of friendship and a lot of intimacy and a lot of deep bonds, deep human bonds. Here on the right side, you can see that is 5 years after this war, the Second Lebanon War. I'm with my friend. We were both like, we stopped being tank commanders and we passed to a more, in the platoon, to a more better position that was we were supposed to teach others how to do things, right? And this is night, it's like 1 degree and we are outside and we're freezing, but we're smiling because we're good friends and we've passed through a lot together. We served together for almost 20 years in the reserve teams. And this is also part of the complexity of these days, because these days, they bring up a lot of memory, the memorial days, a lot of difficult memories, but also a lot of moments you cherish. And there are friends that are very close to you, remembering the same difficult times we were together. On the left side, lower left side, you can see pictures of soldiers with their name, and these are all the soldiers that I knew that were killed in action. There are 15 of those. So Memorial Day is a day that is very, not only emotional, it's very difficult for me. It used to be more difficult a few years ago, before I went to solve and to handle all these difficult memories. Why am I telling you that? I'm trying to bring you in and tell you that this is not like a theoretical thing. It's not like, how do we move from sadness to happiness? Yeah, it's not like a seminar in psychology. And seminar in psychology also deals with actual things, because psychologists deal with actual people's needs and problems. But when I'm coming as a rabbi to do a transition ceremony, I know how it is to be a tank commander, a fighter, a person who've lost friends, also a son of Holocaust survivors. But I don't know how it is to be a mother or a father that lost their child on Memorial Day, right? Who lost their child in the army. And when I'm coming to think about this transition, it raises a lot of questions. For example, is this transition possible at all for them? Can it be done? What kind of emotions? What is the experience that these people come to into our synagogue, into our community, right? I can try to imagine, I can be full of empathy. I want to, I hope I can be sensitive, but I'll try to be sensitive, but I don't really know. I don't really know how a brother or a sister of a soldier or a terrorism victim feel like, right? What do they think about on Memorial Days? I have only my thoughts, my experience, which is sadly rather wide, and I know families, and I know the families of the soldiers, of my friends who got killed, who were killed, but I don't know how it is to be in their shoes. And so when we look at Memorial Days, and I'm trying to analyze, to understand what kind of feelings people have during these days. So, no, it's okay. Mayan, the intern, is coming. She just finished her class for the bar mitzvah kids. את יכולה להגיד שלום, את רוצה?
שלום.
So if we look at the Memorial Days,
Hi.
So in the Memorial Days,
We can't see her.
No, because she's like packing and
Sorry, I just came in and then I ran away. So what's up?
שבוע טוב, נסיעה טובה. So if you look at emotions that come into the synagogue, we see that in the Memorial Day, you see sadness for loss and missing others, okay, missing the one, and also admiration that comes, because when we look at such kind of sacrifice, so people admire the people who paid that price, or the families who keep living. When you see a family that lost someone and they are strong and they are happy, sometimes they are happy, sometimes they smile. They are happy to see you when you come and you admire them. Where do they have the strength? Because you feel sad sometimes, most of the time. Also, nostalgia is something that is floating around these days. For some people, they feel loneliness in Memorial Day. Some families feel very lonely with their sadness and loss, and they feel more lonely in that day. Some feel the opposite of loneliness. I wrote here togetherness, but I'm not sure if that's the way to say it in English. But some people feel like they are hugged, they are wrapped by the community or wrapped by friends. They are feeling more together with other people. They feel that they belong. Sometimes in Memorial Days, you see expressions of anger and depression and also anxiety, which is fear, because many times people, there are many people who didn't go to treat their traumas, and all these things are, when all the triggers are pressed, the sadness triggers and the loss triggers, then you see that these feelings also rise up. Usually you won't see it, you will see it in the media, you will see less of it, but if you talk to people, if you look at them, you will see them crying, you will see them sometimes closed, right? Very closed into themselves, very like a candle that is not burning, okay, that is put down. On Independence Day, on the other hand, you're supposed to see happiness, and you see a lot of happiness. You see joy, you see pride. Pride is something you see also on Memorial Day. Nostalgia, but sometimes frustration, because everyone in the opposition sees the prime minister talking and they are frustrated by his speech, usually, because we are still Jews and everybody are very political. So, and it's also the other way around, right? You see, you have a shift in politics. So this is something, and sometimes people sense maybe Israel is not as good as it should have been, right? There is also that question: are we, as a nation, do we deserve that sacrifice that was made by these young men and women in order for us to survive? Is our country good enough? Are we doing enough to make it worthy, or not worthy, but not worth it, but to make it deserve the sacrifice that was made in order to for it to exist? And also in Independence Day, you can see relief and sometimes feeling of misfitting, dissociation and misfitting because of the gap between Memorial Day and the pictures of happiness. It's like if you close the TV on this Tuesday night, if you open a TV on this Tuesday night and watch the TV for 1 hour, you will be sad. And if you close it and open it 24 hours later, it's like you pass to a different country, a happy country with fireworks, and the gap is enormous. And the transition ceremony is trying to help people do this kind of movement. the transition challenges is, first of all, is the transition possible at all? Because on Wednesday, on the coming Wednesday at 11 a.m., millions of Israelis will go to army cemeteries and eat families of people they know, right? And at the same day, at 8:30, 9 p.m., they are supposed to be happy. And I'm not sure it's possible. For me, personally, for many years, it was impossible. Okay, so it's very difficult. Can the families of those soldiers be happy? Can the families of the victims be happy? It's a very big question. Sometimes the answer is no. The other challenge in the transition is the thought of overcoming. Like, is sadness something you are supposed to overcome? Should we overcome it, win it, or is there something else here? Because you cannot erase it, you cannot delete it, you cannot ignore it. If you delete it, it's unhealthy. There's not something not real about it. But how can you be happy or rejoice after such an intense, sad experience? And that brings to the third thing, the gap issue, that transitioning takes time. And if you want to be true with your feelings, then maybe you need 2 days after Memorial Day in order to stand up on your feet emotionally and rise back to your daily routine. Okay? And what we're trying to do here is very unnatural. Okay, moving. The other challenge with the transition ceremony is avoid being pretentious. And the pretentious, there could be an element of pride here, because you might tell yourself, okay, I will make a good transition ceremony, and all these sad people will go out of the ceremony and say, oh, wow, we've had a great transition ceremony. Now we're happy, we're ready to celebrate outside. And we, the community, we made the ceremony, and we took them out of that Egypt they were in, right? So that is something that is like, I don't know, a landmine. We should be very careful not to step on and not to fall to this kind of thinking, because we should stay humble. The only thing we can do, I believe, is make some space for feelings and make some space for comfort. The other challenge here is, after days of excessive grief and sorrow, avoid putting people down again. Now, there is a danger of, now this is very simple English, I'm sorry for that, but usually in transition ceremonies, they make a part of a sad part, a transition part, and a happy part, okay? And we do that also. But in the sad part, after 24 hours of Memorial Day, people have already heard all the sad songs. They have heard terrible stories. They have felt or refelt feelings, personal feelings and personal memories, which are very difficult for them. And I believe that in order to try and help them do some kind of transition, we should be very gentle with the emotions that we, how do you call it? That we rise. We should aim for a place that is not the place that they were in the last 24 hours. They should not hear the same sad, heartbreaking songs they have heard, for example, in the last, some of the text will be sad text. And that's what I call handle emotional triggers with care. Okay, that is the thing. We should understand that there are emotional triggers here, and we should work very gently when we think about, when we touch these emotions again. So this is our ceremony. This is the outline of the ceremony here on the left side. The gray area is the kind of more sad zone, we'll call it sad part. But the target of it is for people to kind of say farewell to that sadness. Okay, it's refilling it, and I must say that after the 24 hours of Memorial Day, when you hear the score, it's not as shocking. When you hear El Maleh Rachamim, it's not as heartbreaking as it was the first time you heard it. Okay, sometimes you even feel like you're a little fed up from it. Okay, so the ceremony starts with a gathering where people light candles, small candles, on a table covered with a black, how do you call it, mapa, a black cloth, okay? And on the table we put flowers and also shibolim, some symbolic flowers we put on it, and then people light candles, and there's also a list where people can write down names of soldiers they knew or victims they knew. So we will recite these names later. There is an opening statement by the president, a send song, and then some classic elements of memorial ceremonies, which are Izkor, calling the names of the fallen soldiers, of family members and friends of the community, an Israeli poem reading, a family flowers bouquet, a family that lost someone. Here on the right side of the picture, you can see, is putting a bouquet of flowers on the near the. We have a plate with the names of the soldier in the synagogue, so they put it over there. And then the cantor is singing El Maleh Rachamim, which is something you know from funerals and yahrzeit, not yahrzeit, from funerals and Azkarat Neshamot. I don't know how you say that in English.
Yizkor.
Yizkor, okay.
Yizkor service.
Yizkor service, what we had 2 weeks ago. And then we start to the transition. Now the transition is like the heart of the thing, and it's a very gentle thing. In our community, we decided that we'll have 3 songs. The songs are played by a band and the singer. And these songs, the first one is like, I decided that all these songs should be aiming at not happiness, not joy, but the first one should be a little more melancholic, and the last one should be almost happy. And they are all songs of comfort. That is also why we read Kohelet chapter C or 3, the 3rd chapter in Kohelet, with the Ta'amim. And there's also a small talk by me that takes less than 6 minutes. This day also comes after a lot of talks. If you open the TV on Memorial Day, you hear about 40 to 50 minutes of speeches. If you go to the cemetery, there will be people talking, their politicians or representatives of the army, etc. So I feel like people are pretty fed up from talks, and what they need here is comforting music. That is, and a space where they can listen, sing a little, and say their own farewell to sadness. On the 3rd part, the red part here, it's the part of that aims to the celebration of independence. there is a pray for Israel that everybody say together for the state of Israel, declaring Israel's birthday, right? There is all these things, except the rabbi's talk and the opening statement that is done by the president of Magen Avraham. All the other things are congregates, talking or singing or playing or declaring Israel Independence Day. They declare the opening of the celebrations of the Israel's 74th birthday. And then we have a happy song. We bless Shehecheyanu. We say we're happy we reached this time alive. We blow the shofars and we sing a tikva. The candles you see here on the upper side is something I started. It's a very plain, how do you call it, wooden part. When we put 12 candles that symbolize the 12 tribes of Israel, and everybody that is reading something in the ceremony, he lights a candle. And so at the end of the ceremony, we have the 12 candles lit, and it's referring also to the traditional national ceremony where they lead the 12, how do you call it, avukot. It's like small fires, okay? So this is like the national. So this is our transition ceremony. It's built on on something that was done in the last years in the community. Last year it was very moving, and when referring to Corona time, many people came and we felt it was a success. So I decided not to touch it, not to touch the order of the ceremony, not to make a revolution. Because when I look at it, I ask myself, look at the colors here. Maybe we have too much sadness. The sadness to transition and happiness ratio is about 50-50. Maybe it should be 30-30-30, but it's not exact science, right? And so I wouldn't touch anything at this stage. Some more pictures you can see here. Nomi Gretz lighting a candle after she read Tehillim. She's like our classic reader for the Tehillim comfort ceremony. And Arnie Gross is singing El Maleh Rachamim. He's like our cantor for this thing. And also the young generation, the leader of the Magen Avraham, the group that is singing all the songs. And Maya Chaikin was the daughter of the president, but she's also a very good singer. So she's taking part in the ceremony. That is what I have to say about Magen's transition ceremony and about transition in general. If you have questions or ideas or thoughts, I would be very happy to answer.
Thank you. So let's take down the presentation so we can all see each other. And this was so interesting. Thank you so much for sharing it. First of all, thank you for doing this in English. Your English is beautiful, and we just shouldn't take it for granted. But very clear and very moving. So other people might have questions, but I want to start with a question, if I could. How unique is this tekes, this ritual, to Masorti synagogues, or is something like in this form happening at synagogues all over Israel, different movements?
Well, first, I think it's happening in other congregations also. I think the format is grosso modo it's about the same, but I'm sure every community has its own small traditions. It's not like a format we found somewhere. This is and also Magen Avraham, knowing my community and knowing that many of the rabbis serving as congregational rabbis were interns here before. So I think this tradition, I don't know if it originated here, but many congregations share it.
Thank you. Other questions people would like to ask?
I have a question. Rabbi Frommer, so glad I was able to join in the end today. When you were talking about the difficulty of the transition, it made me think of two things that revolve around the concept of that we diminish, well, actually three things. The third one just came to mind about diminishing our joy a little bit, even at times of happiness. And it made me think of the drops of wine during the Pesach Seder that we just did. It made me think about the breaking of the glass at a wedding. And it made me think about the fact that when I walk into our congregation, there's a little segment right inside the main entrance from the parking lot that talks about the necessary part of not finishing because we have so much still to build in the world. And I just wonder about your thoughts of, am I on the right track or am I on the wrong track thinking about that in the context of this conversation of that transition?
Well, in my Greek family, every time we had a family dinner, there was always be an extra plate that nobody eats from, and with the spoons and everything, because there's always someone missing in the table, and our life is incomplete. It's always incomplete, and sometimes we can do something about it, and sometimes we can't. The little piece you described about the synagogue, there is a tradition as a halacha that when you build a house, you keep a part of it, of the wall, and you don't paint it. Okay, sometimes they make a square, they even have the size of the square. Sometimes they used to put a rock in the house that is a raw rock in the entrance, that it will remind you that the temple was not built and it's incomplete. Now, putting the temple aside, when you are very young, when I see my kid Matan, Rafael, who is 1 year old next week, I see true happiness, raw happiness, and I hope he will keep that raw happiness for many years. But after you see some things in life and you go through life, whatever it is, it doesn't have to be war, or sometimes when you're a Jew, you just study history. That's enough. But then you know that that maybe you won't have that kid's perfect happiness, that your happiness will always carry some kind of memory. And also that the happiness, that even mature happiness and mature rejoice, when you're dancing in a wedding, I'll say, okay, and you're very, very happy, dancing in the wedding of your kid or a friend or whatever. So you have passed away in life that had some difficult moments that brought you to that moment in time in the wedding when you stand up from your chair and you go to dance. So it's all part of you. You carry that history with you. And as Jews, we carry Tisha B'Av with us all the time. We carry it. We have Sheva de Puranuta, Sheva Shabbatot of Puranut, that lead to Tisha B'Av, and then 7 Sabbat, Sheva Shabbatot, 7 Shabbats of Nechama. Okay? So in this Tlata de Nechama, anyway, so I think that it's a Jewish thing to remember the difficult times in your happiness. That's why we break the glass, and it's kind of being how do you call it? It's not like having a dreamy view of life, like a dreamy optimistic view of life, or a false pessimistic view of life. When you are happy, you carry that sadness, but when you are sad, you also carry that happiness. And this is a balance thing, I think.
Thank you. So maybe a certain kind of realism,
Yes.
real grounded in reality. Other questions or observations people would like to make? So one other question, we just have a minute or two left. So I'm thinking, it reminds me, personally, this is so beautiful and so much insight into people and how they operate and the unique challenges of being an Israeli and a Jew. So I always wondered how you do the transition from Yizkor, from Hallel to Yizkor. So since you observe only one day of Yom Tov, we observe two. We separate. There's a day that's a Yizkor day, and then there's a day that is just a holiday. And if we had to do them both, especially Simchas Torah, that's the one I always get stuck on, Shmini Atzeret to Simchas Torah. How do you do that? It's the same issue, but it's all in one morning, and it's not quite as raw, I think. But how do you do that in Israel? If I ever have to switch to one day, what would I expect?
It reminds me of what I answered to Scott. First, I'll say that I grew up in Sephardi synagogues. In Sephardi synagogues, you don't do Yizkor. You do a very small Yizkor on Yom Kippur, and that's it, not 3 times a year. And we don't do that, especially not on Shabbat and holidays. We don't do those depressing things in synagogue. Now, that is
the Sephardim are very wise.
Easy answer. But I want to give, and that's why for me, I met that Yizkor, and it was very difficult for me as an, I don't know if aging, right? Because I'm only 46. I hope I'm not aging, but I'm aging. But to go to, and especially as a community rabbi, to do that, it was very weird for me. And I asked myself, why are the Ashkenazis doing these things? And I was looking for an answer. Why put that sadness in the holiday? And the answer I came up with was that the sad things in our life and the people we have lost have shaped us and have shaped our lives. And when you say an Yizkor, we are, I think that we are making a little mistake, because Yizkor is remembering, and the question is, what do you remember from a person that has died? Do you remember the moment of his death? Does the moment of death delete all his contribution to your life, all his good memories, all the happiness he brought to your life? And does it define his life? Or is the moment of living this life just one moment in a long timeline of grace and a long timeline of importance in our life? When I think of, I've lost my mother, I've lost friends in the army, and I know that the moment where they left the world was a terrible moment. But the Yizkor is, we remember dead people, but we remember the people. And and the death is so dramatic that sometimes when we say Kaddish, we think of the moment they died, but that's just the last moment we've had with them, or the last period we've had with them. The people we remember are people who gave something, were meaningful and important in our life, and we've had a lot of meaningful time with them, because those are the ones we remember and we want to remember. So their absence is meaningful for us, but we are a little wrong doing them by remembering only the fact that they died. We should remember all the gifts that they have given us. And that is something that where you can be grateful on Yizkor, when you can be grateful for what these people brought into your life, into our lives, right? When I think about my mother, She gave me life. She gave me values. She gave me education. She gave me freedom. She gave me love for so many years. And the last year of her life was very difficult, but it's like when we put it on the scale, it's uncomparable. The amount of good things she gave me to the 1 year that I had to take care of her, and to that one difficult year at the end.
Thank you. So I think we're done. We're out of time. We're grateful, Rabbi Baruch for your very thoughtful presentation, and we wish you hatzlacha, great success as Rabbi of Magen Avraham, and hope that we'll get to have you visit us in person sometime in the coming year, and as we continue to work together to build the bonds between our congregations and between Jews of our community and of Eretz Yisrael, Medina Israel. And thank you. And we wish you strength for the observance and the celebration coming this week.
Thank you all for dedicating that time on Sunday. And I was very happy to be here with you and share all these things.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Toda rabah.
Toda rabah.